I brought this photo today. I'd like everybody to look at it. This is absolutely, thank you. This is your tax dollars at work. This was drawn by a child in one of America's internment camps. The American Association of Psychologists distributed several of these drawings. You may have seen them in the newspapers. This child's image of where they're staying is full of guards and people sleeping next to each other on concrete floors. I'd like to tell you that this is not America. It is not the best of America, but it is part of America and part of American history. So when you hear that the problem is Donald Trump, we have to be realistic. 63 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. We have to acknowledge that this exists in our society, this desire to otherize and make enemies of our fellow human beings. That this could be done to children in the 21st century is an outrage to all right-thinking people. But don't think that just by standing up and saying, hey, I think this is wrong, you're gonna change any minds. You have to do something. Action at this point, and just using just words, is really inaction, because they know you don't like it. We're already living in a society, in a country, where a minority of votes control most branches of government. The president could not do any of this without the support of the Senate. And he has the support of the majority of the senators in doing all of this, at least the tacit support. So what can we do? We don't know how long this is going on. We don't know if our lawsuits are going to do any good. What can we do locally? I heard some great suggestions on how to get involved, but I want to bring the reality of what we can do here. Now, it was mentioned in the introduction that on June 20th, Thursday morning, that a man was arrested by ICE after making a court appearance in front of his partner, in front of the Thurston County Courthouse, just a few miles from here across the lake, okay? You might have heard also, within 24 hours of that, in Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts, a federal judge ruled that ICE cannot arrest individuals outside of courthouses because of the state's inherent right to have people come and go to its court proceedings. It's an interference with federalism. And one of the reasons they were able to make that argument before a federal judge in Massachusetts is that they strongly support immigrants and they do something about it. In Massachusetts, they set up a policy soon in 2017 regarding interactions with the Department of Homeland Security. A several-page policy issued by the Chief Justice of their Supreme Court. I want to point out that we could do a lot better here in Washington. What did our Supreme Court do? Justice Mary Fairhurst, Chief Justice, I should say, wrote a strongly worded letter expressing concern to the Director of Homeland Security, who was Director Kelly at that time. There was no policy, there's no policy governing our statewide courts. There's no policy governing Thurston County Court. You might think, well, gee, we're in Olympia. We've got some kind of sanctuary policy ordinance. We've also got, we're supposed to be friendly to immigrants. I think the the county commission voted on that. Well, none of those have been turned into policy. When that gentleman was arrested on June 21st, I went and spoke to the couple of the judges that afternoon. None of them knew about it. No one had been notified in the courts. People were coming in and out of there oblivious to the fact that they could be subject to federal arrest just for showing up to give testimony as a victim or a witness to someone's civil case, or to make an appearance on a traffic ticket or a misdemeanor. That's against the basic rights we have as a state and you have as citizens to have your case heard in court. You shouldn't have to worry about whether the person who saw you get robbed at gunpoint was an immigrant who is undocumented and might get arrested on the way to testify at the trial where you're testifying. You shouldn't have to worry about that. It's wrong. It's wrong. In Thurston County, there is no policy, even though Keep Washington Working Act is on the books. Well, what can you do as individuals to change that? Let's take a look at this Thurston County's mission statement: to serve the public through the prompt resolution of civil and criminal cases in a manner that ensures access and fair treatment. Well, if I wanted to do something, and I will, I'm going to write a letter to each and every one of those judges sitting on the Thurston County Superior and District Court and say, you are not ensuring access to the courts. You don't have a policy. None of you were alerted when this happened. The county commission didn't even have a comment on it until 5 days later, and all they said is they were still doing some investigation. That's not good enough. Now, I see a lot of familiar faces, and I know some elected officials as well, and I wish them well. But the fact is, all of our judges are elected, and if they're not doing the job, we gotta let them know, you're not doing your job. Write them. Under the judicial canons, you have to ensure access to the courts. You gotta make sure people aren't suddenly denied their case because no one thought to mention that ICE was doing some happy hunting just outside the courthouse, and my witness got arrested because they happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Judge, you're not doing your job. I want to see a policy right away. I want to see a policy now. We can talk about why you don't have one now. You didn't have one on the 21st, but get it done, Judge, or I'm going to have to vote against you. Okay? Write that to every judge on the bench. Tell them that. Say, I'm going to write in a name. If someone runs against you, I'm really going to consider voting for them, because that's their job. I would write the Chief Justice as well and say, the court has to lead the way. The Supreme Court has to have a detailed policy at least as good as the one they have in Massachusetts. Do you agree with me? And we got to look at our own county commissioners and other elected officials. What are they doing? You know, in King County, they found out just recently, you probably read it in the Seattle Times, that the sheriff was sharing information with ICE despite the county ordinance that forbade that and restricted that information. Who's going to ask our county auditor to do an audit to see whether the same thing is happening here in Thurston County? Are you going to do it? Yeah. Are you? Let's get it done. It has to happen. We don't know anything because we only know what our elected officials tell us. And if we don't ask or demand, they're fine not giving it to us. It's up to you as citizens, not to just say I'm upset with the way things are going. You have to demand the best from your elected officials. You have to ask your elected officials, why aren't you doing this? I need a better explanation than what I've heard, which is nothing. Did you know out of the 10 members of Congress in Washington State, only 2 of them have called for impeachment hearings regarding Trump? Only 2. And I guarantee you more than 2 are Democrats. Okay? Just electing Democrats doesn't do it. Don't let people talk the talk and not walk the walk every single day. We're all just individuals, but if you have the vote and you're not writing to ask why elected officials aren't doing their jobs, then you're not really using your rights as a citizen. I want you to hear what's going on in our name right now for a few seconds. Can you hear that? All right. There are children crying for their parents, talking to immigration officials. There are children appearing in immigration courts as young as 4 and 5, trying to represent themselves. It's a travesty of justice, and only we can stop it. We may not be able to stop it nationally for years, and that's the reality. So we have to do what we can right here in Washington and right here in Thurston County. And that's up to all of us. Thank you very much.